Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this third lecture of Foundation course. And we will be continuing with chapter 2, which we paused in the last session on Friday. So where we were discussing about business environment, right? So this is your session 2 for chapter 2 business environment, where we'll be discussing more about the components of your external environment, that is macro and micro, right? Okay, but before we begin the lecture into getting to know about more about micro and macro, let us very quickly revise what we understood in the previous session, right? We studied about what is business environment, right? These are actually the forces within and outside the control of business that shape its decision, right? So a business environment is basically the force within and outside the control of business, which actually shape its decisions, right? Second thing we studied about was the characteristics of business environment, right? How is a business environment characterized? It is complex, it is dynamic, it is multifaceted. Multifaceted means both opportunity for some and threat for someone other. And it has a far-reaching impact, right? Far-reaching impact. We discussed that any size of organization is affected by a business environment, be it small, be it huge. The size does not matter. It has a far-reaching impact, right? Then we further discussed about like how it influences a business strategy. So a business environment are the forces which are actually controlling the decision making of a business, but how do they influence it? How does it influence the strategy? So we studied that it confines the business decisions. Confines means to restrict, to control a business decisions, and they need constant review, right? And business environment needs constant review. Now, a question I have in mind is why does a business environment need constant review? Or why do we need a constant review of business environment? Because it is dynamic. If you can relate this, see, a business environment is dynamic. Dynamic means ever changing. It keeps changing. It is changing every single day with every single thing happening around us. The business environment is changing, right? Similarly, when it's changing, when it's dynamic, it needs a constant review, right? Constant review means understanding it on a daily basis, reading news, understanding from competitors, having market research teams doing market research. So this is what we mean by constant review. There is exchange of information. This was a very big topic we discussed last time, that the exchange of information. Environment is giving out a lot of information to the business, right? In the form of this is happening on the government front, this is happening on the international front, this is happening, that is happening. Competitors are changing their strategy, trends, there are trends, there are events, right? We discussed about environment scanning. And then we understood the difference between data and information, right? Any data which is useful, which is relevant, which I can use to make a decision is actually called an information, right? We studied about that. Then there are environmental responses through internal strategies. We discussed three strategies. We had an example of Healthy Ram, right? Where we discussed about environmental responses via internal strategies, which were administrative, right? Changing from within the mission, the purpose of the business changes. Then we studied about competitive, where we talked about creating a competitive advantage. What is a competitive advantage? Something which is very unique, which cannot be copied, and we can gain money. We can have an economic benefit from it, right? So that is your competitive strategy. And the third one was collective. That is joining hands with your competition, joining hands with other firms, right? To give the best of the opportunity to the customer, right? Then we also studied about how to identify. We talked about how to identify the components, identify the environment, what is happening. And we studied about environment scanning in it, right? Which had events, which had trends, which had issues and expectations, right? Events, which are huge things that are happening. Trends are a group of small things that are happening in the environment that make it huge. Then we talked about issues, like because of these events and trends, customers or the market might have a lot of issues, right? And then we talked about expectations, what the customer wants when there is a change, when there is a trend, when there is an event in the environment, what is that the customer is expecting from the business, right? We took the example of TikTok. So an event that the government policy changed. There was an issue for TikTok and the customer is actually expecting someone else to bring in that new app, right? So this is how you identify an environment. Then we studied about how to analyze. This is environment scanning talked about identifying and SWOT analysis, that is strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. SWOT analysis talked about how to analyze. Like I know an event, I know there is an event in the environment. Is it a strength for me? Is it a weakness for me? Is it an opportunity for me to gain advantage? Or is it a threat to me? Each of these elements of environment scanning are to be analyzed through SWOT analysis, whether it is a strength or a weakness or an opportunity or a threat, right? Then we talked about different types. We took an example of universe, Earth, India, stars and solar system. We took that huge example to understand what are the different components of a business environment, where we understood that there is an internal environment, there is an external environment, and the external environment has micro and macro components, right? There are micro components and then there are macro components. So basically we talked about that, and we will be discussing each and every component of micro as well as macro in this particular session, right? Before I go forward, I have a few questions from you guys. You're talking about MCQs from the book, right? So let me just quickly answer like this. Let's discuss quickly for a minute those questions, and then we'll go forward, understanding micro and macro. Meanwhile, I'll keep the screen on so that you can revise. Everyone who wants to revise for another 2 minutes, what we have studied till now in chapter 2, you can just go through it, revise it as we are doing these lectures, right? Okay, so I see Aditi is asking about MCQ number 3 in chapter 1. So I was just going through that MCQ, Aditi, and I think there is a what you're finding problem is which of the following statements does not comprise business activity, right? Actually, the question should have been does not comprise economic activity, right? I think this we'll get this corrected in the book, because I think if you have options of sale of old furniture by household for a profit, right? This is an economic activity. We cannot term this as a business, right? I think this is the problem you're also facing, because we discussed business has to be continuous. It has to be a usual transaction. It cannot be a one-time transaction. However, sale of furniture for a profit is an economic activity. We cannot term it as a business. So the question should have been which of the following statement does not comprise economic activity, right? And when we put that word economic activity, now I think option number B, that is your carpenter made furniture for its domestic use. And now this is the right answer, because that is not an economic activity, right? I think that solves your doubt. Then we have another from Tejashri. So Tejashri, I do not understand your question. It says unit 2 practical question number 1. I would really want if you can just clarify the page number or something from which chapter you're talking, right? So I'll be able to help you more. I'll answer your question going forward. Then I have another question, question number 8 and 11. Okay, a lot of doubts from Tejashri. Very good, you're practicing. A second, I'll check those questions. 8 and 10, okay. The dash with their own bargaining power affect the cost structure. Right. So if the supplier, the answer comes out to the supplier. Why is that? Why is that so? Because the supplier, right? A supplier can actually go and increase or decrease the cost of their own product, and that is how a business will have to react to it, right? But this is something we'll be discussing. This is a chapter 2, right? We'll be discussing this today. We will be discussing this today very clearly, and this is something we have in the upcoming lecture today. Most of the questions will be answered after this lecture. I think we should just discuss this first, and then we'll take up your questions. We will solve them for sure, right? Okay. We have MCQ number 2, MCQ number 8. So we'll quickly go to that. Business from entrepreneurship. Answer is C, because entrepreneurs seek an opportunity. Correct, right? See, a business, the difference between a business and entrepreneurship is straightforward. Entrepreneurship is actually seeking out something new, actually solving some new problem. Like that is what we all hear in news, right? Entrepreneurship is about finding an issue, finding a problem, and bringing a solution to the market and then gaining advantage, gaining economic benefit from it. So the major difference between business and entrepreneurship is that it seeks new opportunities. It pursues innovative business ideas, whereas it turns into a business, right? An entrepreneurship after 3, 4 years, 5 years turns into a business. But actually, the basic difference is entrepreneurship brings about innovative ideas in the industry, right? So that is the major difference. Okay. Then we have question 12 and question 13, 14. 12 to 13, 14. Okay. Partnership may be formed to carry on ABCD. Okay. Correct. Because why is that so? Because in social enterprise is more about bringing a lot many people into it, right? It cannot be just two people forming a partnership and doing a social enterprise. It has to have a lot of people. It has to have a lot of people coming into it, making a social impact or starting something. And second thing is social enterprise would actually not be an economic, not be a business altogether, right? There are huge chances that a social enterprise is not a business altogether. So that is why a partnership may be formed. The odd one out will be social enterprise. Because if you think from a big perspective, it is not economic, first of all. If it's not economic, it's artificial persons, right? So artificial persons are companies. Can two companies form a partnership, right? Huge questions. When two companies form a partnership, that is not a partnership, that's a new company, or that's a joint venture, or that is a consortia. If a lot of many people, companies are coming together, we do not term it as a partnership. We term it in terms of maybe acquisition or merger, or we term it as a business purchase, right? Instead of terming it as a partnership. So that is why artificial person is the odd one out. And your HUF can comprise of members of obviously D, right? 14 is easy. Okay. I think we have covered most. We have covered most of them. Okay. A businessman can be an entrepreneur. Absolutely. An entrepreneur will be a businessman. A businessman might or might not be an entrepreneur. Right. So there's a difference. An entrepreneur is for sure a businessman, but a businessman might or might not be an entrepreneur, because entrepreneur is more about bringing about innovative new ideas to the industry. Right. NCQ number 8. This is the last one. Then we'll go forward with this lecture, and then we'll see what questions we have at the end. Which of the following statement describes the best joint Hindu or Hindu-oriented family business? Right? Okay. Best describes. You have to understand the question very carefully, because there will be a word play. Right? Okay. Which of the following statements describe the best about joint or Hindu undivided family? Is a form of business. Every family is in fact a business, not necessarily. Business, there is a family involvement is business, either A or C. See, basically C is the correct answer. Why? Because if you go by statement number 1, it is a form of business particular to and recognized as such in India. Right? So I would say the answer is, they have given the answer as D, which is correct, because it is something only relevant in India, right? And second is every family business, in fact, HUF business? No. No. What about a Muslim family business? Can that be HUF business? Or a family business which is actually not converted into HUF? Is that an HUF business? No. So every family business is, in fact, not an HUF. So B is not correct. A is correct and C is correct, and therefore option number D is correct. Okay. Let me quickly begin with this. This is chapter number 2, business environment, and today we'll be understanding micro and macro environment. So this is the chart. This is the diagram we discussed in the last session, where we understood micro and macro as two components of the business environment. Internal environment is actually a part of the micro environment, and this internal environment will be discussed in detail at the intermediate level. What we're concerned today, what we're concerned at the foundation level in business and commercial knowledge, is to understand the external environment, right? Our focus should be on understanding the outer picture, getting into the more complexity of businesses at the intermediate level. So what we're discussing today is micro as well as macro components of external environment, right? Okay. Quickly, everyone on your keyboard, please. Question number one. This is a quick revision of the previous session that of business environment. The question is, business environment is important to understand to understand for the following reasons, except, right? Business environment is important to understand for the following reasons, except which of the following is false, right? If you understand the question right, business environment is important to understand for the following reasons, except what? A, B, C, and D. 20 seconds on the clock, please start giving your answers. Okay, I already have answers. Wonderful. Absolutely. Option B, D, C, A. I have all these options. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for answering. Okay. I have answers from Brinda, Trishula, Harsha. Shubham is giving the answer. Nisha, Karthik, Kriti. Thank you. Thanks, Risha, Vanshika. Thank you for answering. Khushi, Vishal, Navya. Then we have Sia, Soumya, Prabhakar, Prakhar, Aditi, Sia, Toner. Wonderful. Okay, okay. The correct answer is overlooking competition. That is absolutely correct. Thank you. Like, wonderful for all those who got option B correct. And for others, I'll explain why. Because overlooking competition means ignoring competition, right? Overlooking means ignoring. This is absolutely false because business environment is important to understand to give direction. It gives direction to growth. It determines opportunities and threats. It helps in continuous learning and it also helps in understanding business. It does not help in ignoring business. So that is why option B is false. Right? Okay, question number two. Again, quick revision. Recent fondness of teenagers in online gaming in India can be classified amongst which of the following? Right? Recent fondness of teenagers in online gaming in India can be classified amongst which of the following? Is it a trend, event, issue, or expectation? Quick, 20 seconds, please. Pratyusha, please go to the previous session. You will find that online and we have discussed SWOT analysis in detail there. Wonderful. I have a lot of answers. Answer from Abhay, Kushi, Nisha, Harsha, Aditi. Thank you. Tarun, Anurag. Vanendra is giving Prakhar. Absolutely. Okay, do we have more? Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. The correct answer is trend. Like, wonderful lot of people on the session, right? Smart people. So recent fondness is actually a trend because this is how things are happening. Small events, online gaming, gaming on phone, a lot of peer pressure, people forming small groups, playing online, making friends. A lot of events happening in the environment that are actually forming a trend, right? Okay. Now, for today's topic, we have to understand micro and macro environment in detail. Each and every component we'll be discussing, we'll be having a lot of questions. We will have a lot of examples. So let us begin understanding what is micro and what is macro. So micro is basically the immediate peripheral. What do you understand by peripheral? Peripheral means surrounding, right? So micro is immediate surrounding of the organization, which affects its decisions, its daily functioning, right? So immediate peripheral of the organization, which affects the daily functioning of a business. And one has the ability to change the micro elements to certain extent, right? To certain extent, a business can actually change its micro elements. Not completely, but some extent. If it is powerful, if it has influence. If you remember in previous session, we discussed about influences, right? So if a business has the power to influence an environment, it can actually change micro elements of of its environment, micro elements, right? Coming to macro elements, your macro elements is actually the things which are common to all the firms. They are the external thing. They are outside the purview of business and they're common to each and every firm. They are beyond their control. They can only act to a macro environment. They cannot react. They can only react. Sorry, they cannot change it. They cannot like change it to for its advantage. What they can do is they can only analyze and they can react to macro elements. Right? So basically, it's more about close the things which are close in the environment plus things which are common to the entire environment of the industry or of all businesses, right? So micro is close to the business and macro is at the outer level, right? Okay. So coming to micro, first we'll understand about the different components of micro environment. We have customers, we have competitors, we have organization itself, then we have the market, then we have suppliers, and then we have intermediaries. So the different components of micro environment. If you now think, I said we can change, we can actually manipulate to some extent of some of these micro elements. Now, if you think customers, yes, I can manipulate my customers. For example, Apple can manipulate its customers. It is in a position to manipulate them. Even if they charge more money, they can manipulate the customer trend, right? Selling 20,000 rupees of earphones or selling 1 lakh rupees of phone, they can actually manipulate the customer. That is the micro environment. Then competitors, very close to us. We understand the business. We can manipulate them. Organization, that is your internal people. That is people working inside you, the board of directors and everything. You can manipulate them. You can influence them, right? Then there is the market. What do you understand by market? Market is the group of the entire group, not just the customers, but new customers, potential customers, some other firms' customers, right? Then you have suppliers, people from whom you are taking raw material. You can manipulate, you can influence them. Then you have intermediaries. Intermediaries are people who help in sales. Intermediaries are different channels, different organizations which help in sales, right? Okay. Now, I hear someone is saying I got both wrong. Not an issue, Harsha. Keep practicing. You have these lectures online. There is no issue. You will be good at it. Just try to grasp the concepts. Okay? Okay. And sir, micro elements are under control of business? Not entirely, to some extent. Okay? Manipulate means to influence. To manipulate means to make them do things what we want, right? To make them to act, make them act like we want them to. That is manipulation and influence. Okay, coming to the very first component, which is customers. The first and foremost, the first and foremost element of micro environment is customers. Okay, so what are customers? Customers are actually the people who are buying the goods or services of a business. So the aim of the business is to create. The aim of the business is to create and to retain customers. What is the aim? To create, to make new customers. Retain means to keep them, to keep selling them. They remain with the product, they remain with your service. To create them, to find them, to sell to them, and retain, to keep selling to them, right? Customers are those who pay for a business products, right? They are actually the people who are paying for the business. Products can be goods like ghee, phone, or bed sheet, right? Whatever, XYZ. A product can be anything. Or services like dry cleaning, or saloon, or parlor, or car wash, right? So products can be anything, and services we all know can be anything. So customer is actually the focus of the business is to create a customer and to retain them, right? Okay. A quick question for all of you. Everyone on your keyboards, please. Is there a difference? Is there a difference between a customer and a consumer? Is there a difference between a customer and a consumer? Absolutely, Sia. The question is on your screen. I have a similar question for you. Is there a difference between a customer and a consumer? Answers, please. 20 seconds. Okay, yes, I have Divyanshu asking, can we say microenvironment is one business in India and macro is all over business in India? No, Divyanshu, you're getting it wrong. Microenvironment are different components of the environment which are affecting business. It is not the business itself, right? A business is different and the environment are things surrounding it. Like you were discussing, micro is your like your customers, your organization, or your market, your suppliers, right? These are your micro environment. The business is different from the environment. It is a part of the environment, but it is not the environment, right? Dhruv, I think you shouldn't be concerned about keywords, because I think when you start learning keywords, you miss out on the concept, right? You have to be more careful, be more understanding on the concept instead of finding the keywords in the question or finding the keywords in the chapters. More important is if you get the concept right, because keywords can change. I can tell you when a question comes in the exam, we can change the keyword, right? And when we change the keyword, what is more important is to understand the concept, right? Because the examiner is also smart enough to know that the child or the student is actually coming after learning those keywords. But what we have to check is the concept, right? So I would suggest start understanding the concept instead of finding those keywords, right? Okay, a lot of answers. Most of them say yes. Radha has also given an example. We will take that example, Radha. Okay. So, is there a difference between a customer and a consumer? The answer is yes. There is a huge difference, because consumer is the one who actually finally consumes or utilizes the goods and services, while the customer may or may not be the consumer, right? For example, a father buys books for her daughter, right? The father is not going to study from those books or use those books. The final consumer is the daughter. However, the customer is father, the consumer is daughter, right? So customer is father, but consumer is daughter. There is a difference between customer and consumer. We also have an example from Radha, which says that a mother buys a bread but child consumes. Absolutely right, Radha. Someone is buying but might not consume or use that product or service, right? Customer can further resell the goods, but consumer consumes good for its benefit. Absolutely, Mega. That can also be a case. You're getting the concept right. That is what I'm talking about. You're getting the concept right. Okay. Customer, absolutely, someone might buy it and resell it. They are a customer when they're buying, but the actual consumer is the one to whom he or she is reselling, right? Perfect. So, what do we infer from this? What do we understand? So, marketer, the person, the business has to focus on the consumer. A marketer, the person who is actually responsible for making the product sellable, that team in the business that has to sell this product, the sales team, the marketing team, should focus on preferences means likings of the ultimate consumer, right? They have to understand the preferences of the ultimate consumer to make the product attractive, right? Business should be able to analyze what should a business analyze when we talk about microenvironment, when we talk about customers in the microenvironment. A business should be able to analyze who are the consumers who will actually consume. What are their preferences? What do they like? Who are the consumers? Are they 8 to 10 year olds? Are they teenagers? Are they middle-aged people? Are they 30 plus people? Are they old age people? Right? What are their preferences? What do they like? Do they like fancy things? Do they like simple things? Do they like costly things? What are their buying patterns? Do they buy it very frequently? Do they buy it every month? Do they buy it every year? Or is it something they buy after 5 years? Or is it something they spend a lot of money in? Or is it something they want to save money in? Right? So what are their buying patterns? Three things a marketer should be able to analyze is: who are the consumers? What are their preferences? What do they like? Who are the consumers? What do they like? And what are their buying patterns? Right? So this is customer in the micro environment, right? We're talking about micro environment for a business, components which are very close knit to the environment. We are talking about what are those, or what a business, from a business perspective, or what do we have to be careful about when we are understanding or studying the micro environment. And in that micro environment, if we are studying about customer, we are finding the customer, then we have to see who are the consumers. When we're talking about customers, he the person who will buy. but we have to be more careful about who is the consumer and what are their preferences and what are their buying patterns, right? Okay. The second component of microenvironment is competitors. We all know who our competitors are, right? We know what is a competitor. Competitor is the other business in the same industry, selling the same product, selling the same services. They're competing for resources and the market, that is the consumers and the customers, right? Other businesses which are fighting with us for the same market, for the same resources are called competitors, right? A very good statement is competition shapes a business. Where there is no competition, the business is very manipulative. Business is very harsh, right? They can charge anything. We call it monopoly, right? We have studied in class 11 and 11th and 12th monopoly. So competition is very important. Competition has to be there, right? So a good example through this diagram is given below. Let's talk about India's shampoo sachet market, right? The shampoo we use on our heads, the small sachets, right? Small pouches, 1 rupee, 2 rupee. Those are called sachets. So India's shampoo sachet market share split, like which company has more market, which company has how much customer base, how many customers in percentage terms does that company have. So we have an example like Unilever has 45% of customers. One of the biggest players in shampoo are Unilever. Then we have Johnson and Johnson, P&G. So for Unilever, all these firms are competitors. For Johnson and Johnson, all other organizations are competition. For P&G, all other firms are competition. Right? So this is what we're talking about, competitors. Okay. So what should a business analyze when we're talking about a competition? When we are talking about competitors in a microenvironment, when we are studying microenvironment, talking about competitors, we have to analyze as a business who are the competitors. For example, for Unilever, Johnson Johnson, P&G, L'Oreal, others, Colgate, Palmolive. These are the competitors. What are their objectives and strategies? How are they selling? What is unique that they're doing? What is the great thing that they are doing that we cannot do? Right? What is that great thing that those people are doing, what we are missing out? What are their strategies? Right? And the last thing to understand about competitors is who is the most aggressive and powerful. For example, if you talk about L'Oreal, L'Oreal has around 3% share, right? For L'Oreal, he has to understand who are the competitors. He will see that Unilever, J&J, P&G, others in Colgate are my competitors. What are their objective and strategy? They will have a market research team which will find out what is different. They're advertising more, or they're advertising more for teenage people or more for girls, right? What is the objective and strategy? And who are the most aggressive? So most aggressive, he'll find out that Unilever has the major share. So the most aggressive is Unilever, right? So when we're talking about competition, a few things we have to understand is who is the competitor, what are the objectives, and who is the most aggressive in the market, right? Okay. Now, a very important thing to understand in competition is that a competition can be direct as well as indirect, okay? Competition can be direct as well as indirect, right? What do we understand by this? Let us have a quick quiz. Everyone on the keyboards, please study the question very carefully. Read the question very carefully and answer which of these is direct competition and which of these is indirect competition. Is A direct competition or indirect competition, or is B direct competition or indirect competition? Read the question very carefully. You have 30 seconds and here we go, right? Which of the following is direct and which of the following is indirect? Shubham is asking, what is the difference between client and customer? Shubham, client is something when we talk about business, it's majorly a service industry's customer is a client, right? If I can put it that way. It is one and the same thing. A good or a business which is selling goods is actually saying we have customers, while a company which is selling services might say I have clients, right? One and the same thing. Parul is asking, what is buying pattern? Buying pattern, like we talked, do they spend more money? Or what is their buying pattern? Means what is the trend? How are they spending money? Where are they spending money? Are they buying it every week, every day? Or are they buying it after 6 months? Or are they spending huge portion of their income on that particular product. How are they spending that money on that product or service? That is a buying pattern. Okay, if we focus on consumer, so why the topic name is customer? Because customer is actually the person who is paying that money, right? We have to be more careful about consumers, but then again, with micro environment, you can change that interchangeably, but you have, as a marketer, you have to be more concerned about the consumer, right? So customer is basically the person who is buying that product, right? Okay, Jay is asking how other firms can know other strategy. Well, Jay, very good question. I think you are studying a very good course, chartered accountancy, right? And maybe you would, when you come into industry, you will get to know that there are a lot of tricks, there are a lot of things we do. Like, I am a part of an MNC for the last 2 years. I have seen a lot of tools, a lot of softwares, a lot of discussions that go into finding out what other businesses are doing. So that is why I say this course, this entire module is so fascinating and so interesting. When you go to the real field, right? When you go to actually working in big companies or starting your, you will understand each one of these. For example, I can tell you there are market research companies altogether which are finding out through Google, through different tools, through having interactions with their teams, through having samples being sold to those businesses and finding out how are they responding to it, what is the customer, or actually taking those goods and services from them, right? So they analyze how are they responding. A lot of tricks companies have, right? Okay, we have a lot of answers. We have from Fanendra, Rajan, Ranjana, Disha, Jamwal is giving Ayush, Richa, Dhruv. Wonderful. We have Nehru, then we have Brinda, Kalyani. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. So most of you are saying A is direct and B is indirect. And a lot of you are also saying that A is indirect and B is direct, right? So I think I win in this question because this smart group of people is wrong in this. Okay, so we will quickly discuss. The correct answer is option number A is direct competition. Option number B is indirect competition. Why? Why? Because see, in A we are talking that competition in Indian shampoo market where consumers have plethora of options. Plethora means huge number of, right? Where consumers have plethora means huge number. I will be really wanting you all to understand big words because I think you have that English also in the foundation level, business English, right? So you have to start understanding these words. I am trying my best to give those meanings, but I would suggest you also find meanings over the internet when you revise these chapters, right? So where consumers have plethora, huge amount of options to buy from with almost the same packaging and advertising, each one wanting to increase their share in market, right? So this is a direct competition, selling the same product, selling the same packaging. You go to a stand in a big bazaar or in a shop, in a grocery store, and you ask for a toothpaste, right? You have 10 different options. You go and ask for a shampoo, you have 10 different options. They do the same thing. They have the same components, they have the same packaging, they have the same things, they have the same advertisement. You will have long and silky dandruff-free hair. They're selling the same thing, right? That is why this is a direct competition. It is a direct competition. Same thing, same packaging, same type of advertising, same product, same industry. Everything is same about them. Everything about their product, everything about their outlook of the product is same. That is direct competition. Whereas if I talk about a competition between a car manufacturer and a holiday resort, right? There is no link. A car manufacturer is selling car. Let's talk about Honda. Honda is selling Honda City or Honda Civic, right? Whereas a holiday resort in Goa or a holiday resort in Mumbai is actually selling luxury rooms or luxury services, right? They're selling two different, entirely different things, entirely different things to the customer. So how are they competing? They're competing for the money, for the disposable money of the customer as to who can attract the disposable income of the affluent customer. Disposable income means the part of income which the consumer or the customer is willing to spend, right? So let's suppose I have 2 lakh rupees, or let's suppose I have 5 lakh rupees. Now, as a consumer will decide whether I go for a car this year or should I go to a holiday resort in Goa for 15 days. Same amount of money, same amount of money I have to spend, but where will I spend? Who will attract that money from me? Is it car? Is it Maruti Suzuki? I will go and buy some car for 5 lakhs, or will I spend that money for a holiday resort? So that is an indirect competition between two industries, right? Direct, same thing, same everything. They're selling, having the same competition, different industries, different products, but competing for the same customer. They are competing for the same customer, but different products altogether. That is indirect competition. Okay. Coming to the next component in micro environment is organization. Right? We talked about customers, consumers, and we talked about competitors. Now we are going to talk about organization. What is organization? So the main analysis for any business is to understand the group of individuals who work at the core of its operations. Group of individuals working at the core of its operations. Core means center. Core means that at the important part, right? So understand the group of individuals who are working at the core of its operations. What do we have to understand about these people? We talked about we have to understand about group of individuals, but what do we understand? We understand their passions, we understand their goals, we understand their objectives. What is their vision? What is their dedication to the common goals of the business? What is their passion, right? Why do they actually want to work for this company? Is it just because for the money, or is it more because they actually relate to the product of the company? What are their goals? Do they want to grow, or they want to do the mundane, the basic work in the organization? What are their objectives? Do they want to go for a higher study? They want to be part of the leadership in the organization, or they just want to be the person who is doing clerical work, right? What is their vision? How do they see themselves? How do they see themselves after 5 years or after 10 years? Like, what is their vision? Their dedication to the common goals. A business has a goal, right? A business wants to be the best player in the market. Do those people who are working at the core of its operations, do they want the same thing for the company? We have to understand everything, because that is actually a part of a micro environment. That is actually a component which will affect your decision making. What does the environment do? Environment is anything or everything within and outside the business, within or outside the business, which is actually affecting its decision making, right? So this is something which is inside the business, in the micro environment, and it is affecting the decision making, the passions. What are the type of people which are working at the core of the operations, at the center of the business? That is actually affecting the decision making. That is why this is a part of micro environment, right? So these groups can be clubbed into owners, board of directors, and employees. Okay, these can be clubbed into owners, board of directors, and employees. What are owners? Owners are the founders, the shareholders, the individuals of firms having major stake, major percentage stake. Stake means share, having major stake or share in the business. Those are owners. Who are board of directors? We all know who are board of directors. Board of directors are individuals who are selected and elected to look after the business as a whole. They look after the business operations as a whole. These are board of directors, right? They are responsible for key decisions. They are responsible for increasing the wealth of the shareholders. They are board of directors. Then we have employees, right? We have employees. Employees are the actual people who are working in the organization. Employees are actually people who work on the decisions taken by board of directors, on the decisions taken by the owners, right? It is important that the employees embrace and uplift the value system of the business. It is important that the employees should relate to the business ideology, right? A business wants to be the best in the industry. Employees should resonate. Employees should also feel the same, right? Okay, I have a few questions on this. Is there here we talk about which organization? The organization, any business. We're talking about a business, right? We're talking about the environment of a business. So we're talking about that particular business. A business can also be called an organization, right? A business can be called an organization. Why an organization? Because organization means a club of people working together towards a certain goal. They are organized in this fashion, right? So that is why a business is also called an organization. Who are the board of directors? Uh, This is we just discussed individuals who are actually taking care of the operations of the business. Okay. Shareholders come under which category? Under micro, under owners, right? Shareholders. Shareholders are owners. Correct? Okay. We talked about customers or consumers. We talked about competitors. We just talked about organization as a component of micro environment of a business. The next thing is market. What is market? We understood about customers. What is the difference between a customer and a market is the main question we will solve here. So market is actually the large group of consumers. For example, I will tell you a consume for if I take an example of let's take an example of Patanjali, right? So Patanjali's Dant Kanti, the toothpaste, is actually having a lot of consumers, is having a lot of customers, but the toothpaste market is much greater than their consumers, right? For the people who are actually buying the product, who are actually consuming the product, are consumers and customers, but also the people who are using the products of the competitors, right? Who are using the products and services of the competitors, they also form part of the market, right? The task of the business is to get maximum people from the market to convert them into customers and consumers. They have an entire market. They have to capture from that market and convert them into customers and consumers, right? This is the difference between a consumer, customer, and a market. Market is a huge ocean. Consumers and customers are all the fish inside that ocean and sea. You have to capture maximum number of fish from that ocean. Ocean is market, fish are consumers and customers, right? Okay. So market is a large group of consumers. What should a business analyze about a market? Why should it be concerned about a market? Number one is they should understand the actual size. Now, this thing is very important. When you go into the actual field, when you go and be a part of big companies, these are some things you will obviously want to understand. These are some things you will be given to work on a daily basis, right? So what is the actual size of market? A business should be able to analyze when a business is talking about market as a micro environment, what should it analyze? If you understand the flow of this entire presentation or this session is, we are talking about micro environment. Under that, we are talking about market. And under that, we are talking what to analyze under this. What do I have to take care of? What do I have to understand about this component? We have to understand that what is the actual size of the market. Like there are 7.5 billion people on earth and 72% people need toothpaste daily, right? So what is my market? 72% or 7.5 billion people are my actual market. If I'm talking about toothpaste industry, 72% people are the actual market. That is the market size. What is the potential size? What is potential size means? How much can it grow? 72% people are using. It can grow to another 28%, right? So the potential size of the market is how much more people can add to that market. How much more people will slowly. If I take an example of, let's suppose, online gaming. 50-60% of teenagers are actually on online gaming, but 40% are still there to come into it. So the actual size is 60% and the potential size is another 40%, right? So when we're talking about market, we have to understand this actual size and the potential, the growth potential, right? Like 40% in next 5 years, where 12% every year I have. So 12% in another 4 years, I will have 48%, right? So that is my potential, growth potential of a market. Attractiveness of market. Attractiveness means, is that market profitable? Even if I see a lot of people want this product, is entering into this product actually beneficial? Is it actually going to reap benefits to me? Right? So what is the attractiveness of the market? Like the profit margin is more than 30%. If the profit margin is more than 30%, that means this is a very attractive market, right? So attractiveness, whether I will earn good profits in this market. Then the cost structure. How much money do I have to put to enter into this market? Is it capital intensive? Do I need a lot of money or not? Right? So you have to understand the cost structure of the market. And you also have to understand the existing distribution system. What do you understand the distribution system? That is it easily accessible? For example, if you take example of Lay's and Pepsi, right? The distribution channel is so good. You go to any particular village in India, even the smallest of the villages, you will find a shop which is selling those chips and Pepsi, right? Or Coke, right? This is how great the distribution system is. So you have to understand what is the existing distribution system of this market, right? So when you're understanding a market is a large group of consumers. You have to check actual size, the potential size of growth. You will talk about attractiveness of the market, whether it is profitable, what are the cross structure, like it demands a lot of money, and what is the existing distribution system in that market, right? Okay. We talked about customers, we talked about competitors, we talked about organization, we talked about market, right? Before that, I'll take a few questions and then we'll go to suppliers. Okay. Is there a difference between stakeholder and shareholder? Absolutely yes. Stakeholder is a group of people who are concerned with the business. All people concerned with the business are stakeholders. It includes shareholders, it includes your suppliers, it includes your banks who are given loans, it includes your customers, it includes your government who wants tax from that business or organization. Everyone who is concerned with the business in some or the other fashion is a stakeholder, whereas shareholder is someone who is holding a share or a part of ownership. Okay. Okay, then is there a difference between, okay, I explained that. Instead of owners, BOD can take major decisions. Absolutely yes, if they have been given power as per articles of association, right? That is something you must be studying in law. And are all the people who are affecting the business? Everyone is affecting the business. If you see, each and everything within and outside the organization is affecting the business, and that is why we are understanding which thing is to be placed under which component, micro or macro. Why are we doing it? Because we have different strategies, different tools to understand. Unless we bifurcate a particular component as a micro or a macro or as an internal component, we do not know how to react to it. First, we bifurcate them and then we decide how to react, right? So what we are understanding right now is where to bifurcate, where to put that component, and then we will understand how to react. Okay? Right? We have more questions. Okay. Is it always greater than 30%? No, I just gave an example. It can be anything which suits the business, which suits the board of directors, which suits the owners, right? Okay. Market means public, either or customer or someone else. Market means everyone, potential people who are wanting to buy that product, right? Okay. What about level of management? That is covered in the organization itself. When we're talking about employees, it includes all levels of management. Okay. How to calculate the size of a market? Well, that is another thing that when you actually come to work for an MNC or a huge organization, like I told, there are a lot of tools. There is a different subject altogether, which is very interesting to study, right? So recently I was reading a report which has given a lot of tools of how you can actually analyze the market, how you can find a particular, like what is the percentage, your exact question, how do I find out what is the percentage of market, how do I find out the growth? So there are different analyses, there are huge corporations working on it, right? Okay. Absolutely. Aditi is asking, why is playing games not an issue? Because this is actually a trend we are talking about, like you're referring to that question, I believe, right? So people are wanting to do more of this. The trend, the pattern, the environment is like people are more going into gaming. So there is a trend, there is a push that people are going more into online gaming. So that is why it is not an issue. It is actually an opportunity. It is a trend which is creating a lot of opportunity for a lot of people. You guys must be watching a lot of new people playing games online on YouTube, right? A lot of famous people are doing that. So that is okay. Jyoti sir, but the board of directors and owners are in the business. How is it micro? Okay, so what we talked about, micro includes internal, but it also includes the external framework of the organization, right? So when I talk about micro organization, it is basically the outer structure which is shareholders, the board of directors, and the employees. We never went into detail. What is the mission? What is the mission of this? How to tackle this? If a business is flopping, what do we do? All that is also a part of your micro environment that comes into internal environment that will be discussed at intermediate level. What we are more concerned right now is the external environment, which has micro and macro, but we also, because organization is a part of micro environment, we touched upon it for a few segments, telling that these are the three things you have to be concerned about, right? Okay, wonderful. The difference between business and industry. We talked about this in chapter one. I would really want you to go and watch lecture number one. There was an entire slide where we discussed what is business and industry. You will revise that. I will request you go to it. If you don't find it, next session, ask the question again. If you couldn't find the answer, I'll answer that then. But I request you go and revise that. Okay. Now let us move on to understanding suppliers, right? Suppliers are also a component of micro environment. What are suppliers? Suppliers are the people, are the different businesses, not just people. I am a business and I am taking raw material, I'm taking services, I'm taking equipments from some other businesses, right? So all those businesses that are providing raw material or equipment or services, they are actually my suppliers, right? Large companies can have hundreds of suppliers. Like a huge MNC can have thousands, and even I have seen more than 10,000 suppliers for a company, right? Like if you talk about car manufacturers, they have different suppliers who are giving you steering wheels, who are giving you nut bolts, who are giving you this, brake, grease, tire rims, seat cover, leather. A lot many suppliers for a company, for a business, right? The importance of the material they supply can affect the bargaining power of the business. This is what we were discussing in the starting, right? Someone asked the question, like, who can have a bargaining power? The answer was supplier. Why? Because the importance of the material they supply. Let's suppose I'm a car manufacturer and my supplier of seats, right? There is a supplier who is giving me seats for those cars. Now, seat is very essential for a car, right? I cannot have a car without seats. I will not have a Neil Kamal chair in the car, right? So I have to have a supplier. Now that supplier is providing a very important component of my business, which is car seat. So when that material, what that supplier is providing is very important. Now the importance of that supplier for me increases. When that importance for me increases, now that supplier knows that if I stop selling, or if I want to sell this at a higher price every year, I'll keep increasing the prices. This customer has to buy it. This customer cannot. The business of car cannot function without me. So their bargaining power, their power of asking more money increases. The supplier's power increases when the material they supply is more important, right? And business needs to decide when that happens, when this happens, when you see the supplier asking for more money, when you see the supplier is changing the terms because his product is very important. You start to decide when as a business I am actually concerned about the suppliers, right? So I have to decide whether to outsource or to produce in-house, right? Whether to outsource or to produce in-house. What is the difference? Outsource, like we discussed in previous session, someone asked what is outsource. So outsource means getting the work done from someone else outside. Instead of doing it myself, I get outsourced, I get it done outside. Like most of the banking business of USA is outsourced to Mumbai. They do not do that work themselves in USA, right? They do not do that work themselves in USA, but they do that. They make people in Mumbai do that, right? They outsource that thing. Coming to in-house means doing it myself, doing it within the company, doing it myself is called in-house, right? Okay. If you have very carefully, if you have seen this Parle-G packet, right, this Parle-G biscuits, if you have seen Parle-G biscuits, you will see that at the backside of this package, they have this thing written. They say that they're marketed by this Parle-G, however, manufactured by CF Foods or Coilil Food Products or LVT, like different suppliers. So someone is providing those biscuits, someone is providing that packaging, someone is providing printing, someone is providing something else. So they have a lot of suppliers who are actually combining and making that product. However, it is sold by and marketed by Parle-G, right? So this is something when you each and every product you see, if you start looking around yourself, you will see that all of these things fall into place, right? So this is an example of where you can find a few of suppliers from most of your favorite products, right? Even if you go back at like some Lay's or some, anything that you eat, if you look at the packet, you will have marketed by and you have the supplier's manufacturer's name, right? So this is suppliers. Why are suppliers important? Because they can have a bargaining power if they sell important material for me. And then as a business, I have to decide whether to outsource or to produce in-house. Okay? Either to get it done from the outside or do it myself, right? Okay. A very important aspect is talking about intermediate. What are intermediaries? Sorry. What are intermediaries? Intermediaries are organizations, are different businesses, right? Which are actually helping in selling that product. Okay, I'll give you a very good example. Most of you would have gone to a Pantaloons or a Big Bazaar, right? Or you might have gone to any of those big, like West Side or Pantaloons or Big Bazaar or Metro malls, right? What are these businesses? What are these actually doing, right? Okay, before I go that, I think I have a few questions. We'll answer that. Uh, Call center is an example of outsourcing. Yes, absolutely correct. You got it right. What is the need to mark the name of suppliers on the package of the product? It is mandatory as per law of India or as per even around the world. It is mandatory to mention that. So that is why you have to mention that. Okay, coming to intermediaries. Okay. What is the difference between marketed by and manufactured by? Like we discussed, Parle-G is actually having a lot of people outsourcing their working, right? Parle-G is selling that biscuits, but it is outsourcing that thing to a lot of different manufacturers. Someone is selling them that biscuit disc. Someone is selling them packaging. Someone is selling them distribution. Someone is helping in this. Someone is helping in that, right? So that is what is the difference between marketed by and manufactured by. Okay. So intermediaries. We were talking about intermediaries. Example I discussed was Big Bazaar, Metro malls. You have your Pantaloons, you have your West Side. When you enter any of these big stores, when you enter any of these big businesses, what do you see? There are products from a lot many places, right? There are products from this company, there are products from that company. Tens and thousands of companies' products are there in a single store. Tens and thousands of products are there in a single. That business is handling the products of multiple businesses, right? Those businesses, Pantaloons, Big Bazaar, your West Side, your Metro malls, right? These are actually called intermediaries. They are actually helping to sell that product. How are they helping to sell that product? Because they have their own brand name. They have their own credibility in the market. I go to Pantaloons, I go to West Side, I go to a Metro mall, I go to a Big Bazaar, I go to a Reliance Fresh, right? Why? Because I know they will have good products, right? So they have a credibility, they have a brand name, which helps in selling the products of other businesses. Thus, for other businesses, these businesses become intermediaries to reach the consumer, to reach the customer. They are the bridge between the actual company and the customer. They are intermediaries, right? Just like we discussed, sometimes consumers do not know the manufacturer of the product, but they rely on the departmental store's credibility or the big retailer's position. Right? We are more concerned about let's go to Big Bazaar because they will have good products or they will have different products. Let's go to D Mart. They will have good products, so they have different options for us, right? So it is better to go to them instead of going to a particular shop or particular product itself, right? So that is why. But just I gave you example of Pantaloons. Like here, Pantaloons is the intermediary for multiple firms producing clothes, right? There are XYZ kurta brands, there are XYZ shirts. You have this 10 different companies of shirts hanging in a Pantaloons. So all those businesses are actually putting that material or their product in an intermediary's store because the intermediary has more value. And this intermediary actually forms part of your micro environment. It is it is in the very near shell of the business, right? It is very specific to that business, right? It is not common to all the businesses. It is very, what you can say, closely knit. It is in the micro environment of that business. That is intermediary, right? Okay. Quick question for all of you. Hands on the keyboards, please. Which of the following elements is not a part of microenvironment? Which of the following elements is not a part of microenvironment? You have 10 seconds. Please type in your answers. Okay. I see again. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Okay. So let's discuss the answer quickly. The answer is economy, right? Economy is part of macro environment. Customers, suppliers, and organizations, right? And the organization is part of your micro environment, right? Congratulations to most of you, like every one of you got it correct. Okay, let us move on to the macro environment. The micro environment, we discussed about customers, we discussed about competitors, we discussed about organization, we discussed about market, we discussed about suppliers, and we discussed about intermediaries. Now we should go to understanding macro environment, right? Micro was the very close to the business, which they can actually influence or manipulate. Now we'll talk about the macro environment, which is common to all the businesses, which is common to all the industries, and we will discuss about how they are actually affecting a business's decision making, right? So different components of macro environment are demographic, economic, political and legal, social, cultural, technological, and global, right? So we will be discussing each of those components in detail with not many questions. So the first is demographic, economic, political, legal, social, culture, technological, and global. What we are talking about? We are talking about macro environment, right? Okay. Let us quickly start with understanding what is demographic. What is demographic? The demographic basically means characteristics of population of an area. Demographics means characteristics of population of an area, like age, gender, employment status, education status, race, income, right? What are the different, what are the age of that particular population area? If I talk about India, the age is, we have a lot of young people. Like 60% of the population is between 18 to 30, right? So that is a demographic, that is a characteristic of the population of the country. What is the gender? We have more men than women. What is the employment status? There is a huge amount of unemployment in the nation. That is a characteristic of the population. That is demographic, right? What is the education? People are not very educated in India. Then race, like what is it? More of Hindus, more of this, more of that, right? What is the income? What are people more rich here? What is the average income of an Indian? Are people below poverty line? Are people above poverty line? What is the percentage of people in those brackets, right? So everything, when it talks about the characteristics of a population, we call it a demographic, right? So demographic is basically the characteristic of the population of a particular area. That area can be anything. That area can be India. That area can be your small locality. That area can be your 10 houses, your society. It can be anything. And when I talk about the characteristic of the population of that area, of how big, how small it can be, when I'm talking about that thing, it is called demographics, right? The question is, why should business study? Why should business study demographics, right? They should understand, they should study demographics for two things. For two things, right? Number one is, how will demographics affect the market size of the industry they are part of? Now everything will fall into place for you. We discussed about market size, right? What is market size? Market size, we talked about 7.5 billion people on earth, 72% people use toothpaste, right? Now, when I talk about 72% people using toothpaste, how will demographics affect the market size? Now, I as a business, let's suppose I am Colgate's marketing head, right? Now, I have to decide, I have to prepare a strategy. My strategy is to get in all the children from ages 3 to 10 to buy my product. Now, what is the demographic I'm talking about? My market size is 72%, but the demographic I'm talking about is all children between ages 3 and 10. I'm talking about a demographic that is macro level. I'm talking about outside. I'm going outside that market. I'm talking something very big from a world perspective, right? How will that demographic affect the market size? When I'm talking about 3 to 10 years, now when I'm putting a condition of demographic on my micro environment of market size, a macro element demographic on a micro element market size, it will shorten the market size, right? 72% people, but only 10% are children from 3 to 10, right? So that is why we have to study everything in the environment. We cannot just say microenvironment, we will not study macroenvironment. We have to study each of these environments, right? So how will demographics affect the market size of the industry they are part of? Second is, what opportunities or threats does demographics represent for them? SWOT analysis. Remember SWOT analysis? The SWOT analysis we get to know through them. When we are understanding demographics, we have to do a SWOT analysis of demographics to understand what are the opportunities or threats from that demographic, from what demographics represent for them. I will give you an example and you will understand this very easily. Okay. Now here's a question for you, and this demographic topic will be entirely clear. Based on demographic understanding, which of the following countries would be more suitable to sell old age people related products or services? based on demographic understanding. What is demographic? Demographic is characteristic of the population, right? What is their age, gender, income, education? Based on demographic understanding, which of the following countries would be more suitable to sell old age people related products and services? Is it India, China, Japan, or Indonesia? 30 seconds on the clock. Okay, wonderful. A lot of mixed answers. Okay, okay, wonderful. From Muskan, Tejashri, right, Vanshika. Okay, then I have from Shravani, Yashasvi is giving Vanshika. Wonderful. Okay, let us quickly check. Perfect. Right, okay. So based on demographic, the correct answer is Japan. Why? 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 Because as the maximum number of old age people reside in Japan, right? The maximum number of old age people reside in Japan. That is why, based on demographic understanding of a business, I am a business owner, I am a marketing team of the business. I have to understand the demographics of the population, right? So the demographics of Japan is that there are maximum number of old age people. So to sell a product or a service which is more relevant to old age people, Japan is the most potential market, right? So this is why demographics, understanding and characteristics is important, right? Okay, let us move on. So let us discuss a few demographic characteristics in brief. We talked about population. Let's talk about population size. So the aim is to get the major share of the potential population size, right? Like we discussed, the aim is to get the maximum number, maximum population to buy our product or services, right? Why is India becoming so lucrative? If you go to the world scenario, you see a lot of companies are coming to India. Apple is starting their factory in India. Toyota is having their factory in Bangalore, right? A lot of companies, even Tesla is in talks of starting their factory in Chennai, right? Why is India so huge a market? Because of the population size. India is lucrative for many companies because of population size. Even in social media, Facebook is actually advertising on television. You'll see WhatsApp is advertising on television. Why? Because there is huge amount of population in India and everyone wants to get the maximum chunk out of it, right? Geographic distribution. How are people distributed in terms of geography? More people are into urban area, more people are into rural area, right? Are they living in metropolitan cities? Are they living into cities or villages? Where are they living? Because where they live will define how much they spend on what product, right? Ferrari cannot go and advertise in a village, right? If you think from a perspective of a huge organization, let's talk about Ferrari. So Ferrari will not go and advertise in a rural area. There's no point. right? So understanding the geographic distribution of the population of the potential market is of utmost importance, right? Secondly, where does a company want to start their business? Where does a company want to put up a factory? Is also a major decision maker of geographic distribution, right? Like transportation. Is there proper transportation? Is there proper government support? Like Madhya Pradesh government is having a lot of initiatives for manufacturing units from around the world, while Chhattisgarh is not having that many lucrative initiatives. So the government support, how is the government support is also defining it. How is the electricity? How is the internet connection there? So geographic distribution. Are people there? Are people living in that area? It is also a defining factor for a company to start their manufacturing unit, right? Talking of ethnic mix, what does ethnic mix? Ethnic mix means? Ethnic mix means more diverse the demographics, more inclusive and potential the market is, right? So ethnic mix means lot many people from lot many backgrounds, a lot many people from lot many more like if I talk about a market where we have all the Gujaratis, right? Let's talk about a community. Let's talk about a small area in Mumbai, which has a lot of Gujaratis living there. So from a business perspective, I have to understand the ethnic mix, right? I cannot go and open a chole bhature shop in a Gujarati area. I can open, but that is not very lucrative. However, if I open a dhokla shop in a Gujarati area, right, that I have to understand the ethnic mix. This is just an example. So if you understand it from the ethnic mix perspective, I'm understanding the demographics of the area where I'm having my business, right? So for example, a meat shop in a Hindu area, let's suppose there is a meat shop where everyone is Hindu, right? It would be less profitable than a meat shop which is more in an area where people consume more of meat, right? So you have to understand the ethnic mix of the area where you're actually doing your business. Coming to income distribution, right? You have to track changes in the income patterns that can show up some opportunity. For example, a locality where more affluent service class is residing, more rich people, more salaried people, high salary income people, high value business people are living in a locality. So opening an imported food item store is more viable, right? I have a store which is selling all those imported chocolates and fruits, organic fruits, and this and that. That is more lucrative if I understand the income distribution of the area where I have to serve, right? I cannot go and open, I can go, if I go and open an imported food shop near a slum, right? No one is going to come because the income distribution is not matching my business, right? So that is why it is important to understand demographic mix or the demographics of the population of an area while understanding the macro environment, that is the outside part of the environment, right? The second component of macro environment is economic, like economic components. What are the economic components of macro environment? So the first one is, give me a second. I see a few questions. Let me see. We'll come to economic then. Right? All right. I have those questions. We'll discuss that at the end because that will make more sense then. Right? Okay. Let us talk about economic components of the macro environment. So economic environment can be best understood with two aspects, right? When we're talking about economic aspect of macro environment, it can be understood with two aspects. Number one is purchasing strength of the market, right? And the second is credit or capital availability of the for the growth. What do we understand by these two components? Number one is purchasing strength of the market. Purchasing strength means More purchasing power of the people, easier it is to sell. If the purchasing strength, if people are wanting to spend more, it is easier to sell, right? If people are very much focused on savings, it is very tough to sell. If you look at the two markets of United States of America and you look at the market of India, you will see people in India save much more than people in United States. So that is why you see a lot of new products coming up in USA before India. One of the major reasons is because of the economic component of the country, right? The purchasing strength of the market is all the people, right? We understood in microenvironment what is market. So the purchasing strength of the market is actually defining the economic component, which means if people are ready to shed more money, it is easier to sell. Second thing is credit and capital availability, which is simple as we know. The lesser interest on loans, more easy government policies, more easy it is to get capital in the economy of a nation, the more potential to grow, right? If it is easier to get a loan, if it is easier to get more money, it is easier to grow. So two things when you understand an economic component is first purchasing power of the market, and the second is your credit and your capital availability for growth of the business. Okay, we will touch upon three important components, right? Three important concepts in economic environment. The first one is what are different types of economic systems. Then we have what are the different economic conditions and factors, and what are the economic policies, different policies, right? So what are different types of economic systems? Number one is capitalism. Capitalism is a structure in economy which is based on demand and supply, right? A structure in economy which is based on demand and supply is capitalism. Demand and supply rule the market flow of goods and services, like private ownership of resources. There is more private ownership, more private companies. Electricity is private, railway is private. There is capitalism. Everything is based on the demand and supply from the consumers, right? Like in USA. USA, we have a lot of capitalist market. Why? Because everything is privatized. Major things are privatized in USA, and everything is based on demand and supply. More the demand, less the supply, higher the prices. Less the demand, more the supply, lower the prices. Each and every component is based on this very principle, and that economic system is called capitalist system. That is called capitalism, right? What is socialism? Socialism is production controlled by the state or the government, right? When government has control over each and every component in the market, each and every industry, each and every service that is going or happening is controlled by government, right? Even more or so, if not everything, but major, like 90, 85, 90% of the industry or businesses are controlled by government. It is called socialism. It is called socialistic form of economy, like China. In China, the government controls all the businesses. In USA, everything is private. People own the business. They play on demand and supply. That is capitalism. Socialism in China, government controls everything. Then comes India, right? So India is a mixed economy. We also have private companies. We also have public companies. Major things, major components of the economy like coal or mining or railway are controlled by public, that is government, and the other businesses have been privatized. Private individuals own those businesses, right? Private and public demarcation of markets. Demarcation means division. There is proper division that this is something that privates can do. This is something that privates cannot do, right? Like in India. Railways, coal, mining, all are public owned, while other sectors are open to private players. So why is this important to understand? Because as a business, if I'm a businessman working in India and I want to go to China to open a business, I have to understand what type of economic system is there. There is socialistic system. Government controls everything. So I have to plan according to it. That is why it is important to understand the microenvironment, economic environment, which has different economic systems, right? This is why it is important to understand. The second component was economic conditions. We understood about economic systems. Second is economic conditions. What are the economic conditions of the country? How do you identify an economic condition? through GDP. What is the gross domestic product? What is gross domestic product? It is the final value of all the final goods and services produced in the economy. The value of all the final goods and services produced in the economy, you club them, that becomes your GDP. India's GDP is somewhere around 2 trillion, right? 2 trillion USD is India's GDP, while USA's GDP is something around 20 trillion, right? So this is an economic condition. Which country is more better? Which country is higher in terms of economic structure? This is through economic conditions. And to understand economic conditions, you need to understand what are the stock market conditions, what is the GDP of the country, then what is the foreign trade policy, everything around foreign trade policy or interest rates, what are the inflation rates, right? All these things tell you about the economic conditions of a particular country, of a particular industry, of a particular place or a population, right? We can also have this for states, like is which state is more affluent, because more companies, the companies which are doing better in stock market are more placed in Mumbai. So we know the economic conditions of Mumbai are far better than that of, let's say, some other place like Jharkhand, right? Because companies are doing better in Mumbai in terms of stock market. So economic conditions. Coming to economic policies, right? Now there are different kinds of economic policies, which is very important to understand. I think this is something we all have studied in class 11th and 12th. We have touched upon each and every aspect. This should actually be a revision, right? And if you have not studied this, not an issue. We have it on the slide for you. So first kind of economic policy is industrial policy. Industrial policy, as the name suggests, how they regulate and promote, how often the government is regulating or controlling the industry, how are they promoting industries? Are they even promoting industries? Are they even regulating industries? Right? So this is what an industrial policy tells us about. Fiscal policy, how much is the public expenditure? How much is the government expending on the economy? What is the taxation? What is the kind of taxation? It is progressive. Is it scales? Like in India, we have progressive. Lower bands have no taxation. When you go up, it is the high. The tax starts increasing. The tax percentage starts increasing. Other countries might have a flat percentage. Whatever income you earn, 40% is the tax. So what is the taxation policy? That is covered under fiscal policy, right? What is the public debt? Means how much loan does the government have? A government which has more of loan will charge more tax, right? So if you understand from a perspective of a business, if my country has more loan, the country will charge more tax because it has to repay that loan, right? So we have to understand the fiscal policy of that particular country, of that particular place, of that particular scenario, of that particular area, right? Coming to monetary policy, supply of credit in the country, as simple as that. Monetary policy defines the supply of credit. How easily you will get the loan, how cheaply you will get the loans to grow your business is your monetary policy. Foreign investment policy, simple as the name suggests, foreign direct investment rules. Like Reliance Jio's latest deal with Facebook and Google, right? So India is very open in terms of foreign investment lately, right? Recently, they have increased the FDI rules to 100%, right? So the foreign investment policy of India has increased, it has improved. It is asking foreign investors to come into. So from a foreign business perspective, India has become a very lucrative market because the foreign investment policy has improved, right? So I, as a foreign investor, I am looking at the macro environment. When I'm looking at the macro environment, I look at India as a potential market. When I look at India as a potential market, I understand its demographics. I understand its economic conditions. Under economic conditions, I go and see what is the type of economic system it has. Yes, I see it has mixed economic system. Then I go and see what are the economic policies. What is the industrial policy? What is the fiscal policy? What is the monetary policy of India? What is the foreign investment policy of India? What is the export and import policy of India? Is it wanting more of export? Is it wanting more of import? Increase export? Does it want to decrease import? What is that? So if you look at the latest example of Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? If you look at the latest example of Atmanirbhar Bharat, you will understand that import has been decreased. The aim has been to decrease. The aim has been to decrease your income, right? Your incoming. Okay, give me a second. I see a few questions. Okay. Absolutely. Give me a second. I will just refresh, see what are the few questions I have. Right. Okay. Okay. Think next question. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just answer a few questions quickly. Let's say, uh, what is fiscal policy? Fiscal policy is public expenditure, like we discussed. Then, what is lucrativeness? Lucrativeness means better, lucrativeness more attractive, right? Okay. Perfect, perfect. Then we have what is bargaining power effect means. Bargaining power means like they have more control over controlling that price, right? That is called bargaining price. Bargaining power is control, being able to control prices. Okay, demographic environment. You can just skip back the video and see if you still have any questions, please post that. I'll reply. Okay. Okay. Disposable income means income that people can spend. Then you have, is inflation good for a country? That's a different topic, but I'll tell you, inflation is actually good for a developing country. Why is that? I would request you to go to Google and search why is inflation good for a developing country and it is bad for a developed company, right? Inflation is good for a developing country like India, but it is bad for a developed nation like some countries in Europe or USA. So why is that? That is a task for you. It is a very interesting topic if you read it. Okay. MSME means micro, small, medium enterprises. Okay. Is there a difference between fiscal and monetary? Absolutely, yes. Here you are. Fiscal is about public expenditure, taxation, and debt, and your monetary policy is basically your supply of credit, supply of loans, right? Okay. Uh, sure. I'll try to share my details. You can ask questions in this. I guess you can also ask questions in the box or in the comment box. I think so, right? I'll let you know like what other portals you can reach me. I'll let you know about that. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on quickly. We will be short of time otherwise. So we understood about economic system, economic condition, and we also talked about economic policies that form part of your economic component of the macro environment, right? Okay. Now let's move on to political legal. Let's talk about what is political legal. Three important elements of political and legal environment are first government, second is legal, and third is your political, right? Government, legal, political. So what is government? What actually do I have to take care about when I'm understanding the government? So changes in regulatory framework. How often does a government bring new rules? Or what are the taxes and duties that a government wants to impose? Like I know, if there is particular government in a country, I know if I'm talking about, let's talk about United States for a second. There is a lot of turmoil on the government side right now. So for a business to start a business in US right now, it's not the right time. It might be not a right the time because the government is changing, right? The regulatory frameworks might change as someone else comes into the government, right? So this is something on the political legal front a business has to analyze. For example, GST changed the trading landscape in India, right? When this particular government came with a motive that we will change the systems, we'll bring in new things. And so for a business, it had to be prepared, right? Plus, there was this note bandi, right? Like the notes were entirely revamped. So this is something that the government's ideology you have to understand as a business. If you understand the government's ideology, the ideologies change. The current government's ideology is changing, disrupting, making new things, right? So you have to understand that on the government front. That comes under political legal. Talking about legal, countries with less compliances, right? If like India under if you study GST when you go further in the syllabus, so GST has a lot of compliance, right? You have multiple returns to fill, you have multiple things to tell government, you have this and that, this going on, a lot of compliances. There is not ease of business in doing in India. So where there is no ease of doing business in India, or there is no ease of doing business in any particular country, where there is more of corruption. If you go to Russia, Russia is notoriously infamous. Like it is notoriously infamous for being very corrupt, right? So a business wants to do business in India, an organization, individual, any person, any group of individuals wants to do business in Russia, they have to be very clear on the government front. They have to be very clear on the political, social, political, legal side. Political, legal component of macro environment that what is the government there like? What is the legal system? It is corrupt. It is said to be corrupt, right? So we have to analyze that. Coming to the political part, then again, they're interrelated. That is why they're in a single component, the government, the political framework, the political pressure groups. Like if an opposition party is very strong in a country, there is more of political pressure. And similarly, it defines the business decisions, right? Businesses also have to take care of how the politics in the country is going on. Like, for example, if some of the businessmen are actually benefiting from a political standpoint, right? So the other businesses might see that they're getting advantages, which we are not. So it is not very lucrative market for us anymore. So you have to understand the political legal standpoint as well, right? Coming to social culture, we talked about demographic, economic, political legal had government, politics, and legal. Small thing to understand. We are not going into details, but you understand the government, what is the government's ideology, what is the political structure, is politics very strong, or there political pressure in the country, or is the legal framework sound enough, are the businesses heard? If I talk about legal, are the businesses heard enough? Are there cases on business? Are ethical businesses valued in a country, or does a business have to be corrupt to work in a country? Right? They have to analyze everything in this macro environment component of political legal. Coming to socio-cultural, This macro factor is so general in nature, social culture is so general in nature that it influences all the businesses in a similar manner. It is so common, it is so general in nature that it affects all the businesses in a similar fashion, right? It represents the core culture and social beliefs of the society, which are difficult to change. And hence, a business needs to operate in accordance with them. What do you mean by this? So just by taking the example of your social culture, let's suppose talking about India and talking about US, or let's talk about India, let's talk about China. So the social culture, right? The general structure of people's thought process, of the population's thought process, of the government, of the population, every component of that particular area, of that particular country, or the world as a whole, is towards a particular same set of belief, right? So that is what a business has to gauge. If I can give you an example, so let's go to this component. What do you have to analyze, and then we'll discuss an example after this. So talking about social culture, a business has to analyze social concerns, right? So let's suppose a particular country is more concerned about pollution or women empowerment or corruption, right? The social attitude is more ritual, more people are into religious acts, more people have strong beliefs. The population has a pattern of preferences. There is a pattern of preferences that the major part of population is into religious activities, right? The family structure. We're talking about India has more of joint families than any other country, right? So the family structure, we're talking about the social culture. It is the in entirety, the population in entirety, the government thought process, the population, everything. If you club that together, it becomes a social culture element of a particular society, right? The social concerns, the social attitudes, family structures. If you want to take an example, are when India launched that Chandrayaan, right? So even the ISRO chief went to a temple, right? So that is a social attitude of the society as a whole. We in India as a society, our social attitude is very ritual. We are very religious people, right? So that is how a business has to understand the social culture of a society. Me as a business cannot go against what the people believe. Social culture is basically talking about the beliefs of people, what people actually believe in, what society, the government and the people together believe in, right? Me as a business, I as a business, or any business cannot ignore this. They have to be in line with the belief system of the population, of the government, right? Or the family structure we talk about, the education levels, the awareness and consciousness of rights and ethics, right? For example, now there is a social concern about Swachh Bharat in India recently, right? So there is a changing social concern. Your Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is a part of your social culture. It will become a part of social culture because the social concern is more about pollution. It is more about cleaning the society. So as a business, if as a business I do a SWOT analysis, if as a business I go and do a SWOT analysis, I get to know that this is what I have to do, right? So a quick question for you all. Foreign investment policy of the government is a part of which of the following, right? Is it social culture? Is it political legal? It is economic, or is it demographic? We just discussed this. Foreign investment policy of the government is a part of which of the following? 20 seconds on the clock, please. Wonderful. I have answer from Jitashri, Vanshika. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I have answer from Navya, Khushi, Tanushi, Vijay Lakshmi. Wonderful. We'll take 5 more seconds and then we'll go to the answer. I have answered from Aditi, Lakshmi, Trishula, Navya. Wonderful. Thank you so much for answering. Another 2 seconds. Okay, I have answered from Anurag. I have answered from Bhavna. Right? Good, good. From Anurag. Good. Alright, so the answer is economic. Yes, foreign investment policy is part of economic component of macro environment. Right? Congratulations to everyone. Every one of you got it correct. So that is a good thing. You're understanding the concept. Okay. Talking about technology. Technology as a component of macro environment is super, super important. Why? Because technology is one of the most relevant for any business, and it is the most important element because it is changing. It is changing how businesses operate in each and every industry. And so technology is actually deciding how a business operates in each and every industry it's happening. And technology is changing super fast. That is, it is very dynamic. It is disruptive. Disruptive means it is breaking the old ways of doing business and it is bringing new things. It is disrupting, breaking old ways. It is creating opportunities and it is also becoming a threat, right? It is creating opportunities for new businesses while it is also becoming a threat for old businesses. So understanding technology is very important. But what do I understand in technology, right? So a business should understand four important things. First is what is the pressure of technological change? Whether my business needs a technological change or not. Yes, it needs a technological change or not is what I have to analyze. Second is what are the opportunities being created? What are the opportunities being created through this technology? I have to take care of that as well, right? And what are the risks and uncertainties of existing markets? Right? If I don't change, if I don't take up new technology, what are the risks that I have? Then what are the R&D expenditure of the firm as well as the government on the technology, right? Is government pushing for more technological changes? Is the country more focused on technology? Only then I would want to go into technology, right? I do not want to be in an economy. I do not want to be in a situation where I am spending a lot of money on R&D, but the government is not giving any benefits, right? However, in India, you will see you have a lot of benefits even in taxation. You have your R&D expense rebates, you have discounts in taxation on scientific research and everything. That is what the technological environment of a country, of a place, of a society is, right? That is what a company has to analyze. So like with the advent of electric cars, now you see a lot of electric cars are coming. Even in Delhi, I was reading like 200 electric buses are coming on road in the next 2 months, right? So with more advent, even the government wanting more electric vehicles on the road, the petroleum industry is going to find it really difficult. So technology is becoming opportunity for the electric lithium battery manufacturers or the electric vehicle manufacturers, while it is becoming a threat for the petroleum industry, right? So you have to understand the technological environment from a macro environment perspective, right? So business can ask these questions. If a business can answer or ask themselves these questions, it will be very helpful to analyze the technological environment, right? So what are the current technologies being used by me in the business? How critical are they for the operations? Do I actually need these technologies? Do these technologies actually do an important work for my business? So what are the new technologies that are disrupting the industry, that are changing, disrupting, that are breaking the old industry, that are bringing about change? What are those technologies? So is it viable in terms of return on investment to deploy them? So I found out that there is a technology that is bringing about change in the entire industry. So is it beneficial? Is it profitable? Is it viable? Is it profitable? It is good to in terms of return on investment. If I spend 10,000 rupees, will I get 15,000 out of it? Is it viable for me? Is capital requirement available? So if I have to spend 10,000 rupees, do I have that capital to invest in technology? Will my efficiency improve in percentage terms? If I employ that money, I get a return, but will my efficiency improve? Right? Will I be better off from my competitors? If I can answer all these questions as a business from a technological perspective, I will get to know whether I need better technology or not, right? As simple as that. If I can answer these questions, it is easy for me to understand whether I need to go for a better new technology or not. Right? So the world has, so but now coming to the global aspect. We talked about demographics, we talked about economic, we talked about political, legal, socio-culture, the beliefs of the society. We just discussed technological component of macro environment. The last component is global. What do you understand by the global element? So the global element is the world has become one, right? Via internet, via transportation, through flights, through planes, through international cargoes, ships traveling from one continent to another, planes traveling another 10, 12 hours, they're coming in and out of the countries, goods are going, over internet, people sitting in US with lightning speed at the real time. Right? See, the world has actually become very approachable, very accessible, exploitable. Exploitable means we can actually benefit from this. When it is accessible, it is approachable, we can exploit, we can benefit from this global world. And it is readily available to everyone. The best part is it is readily available to everyone in the economy, right? Anyone can access this, but it is highly dynamic and sensitive, right? So the global environment is really dynamic. It is changing because we have 192 countries in the world with different government, different demographics, different economy, different political legal structure. Everything clubs into global, right? If you understand from this perspective, when I'm understanding the global perspective, everything comes under all components of macro will actually be taken care of when I have a global perspective. So from a multinational company perspective, if I understand the global perspective, it is highly dynamic and sensitive because it has all these components. It's political, right? It has the political aspect, it has this social cultural aspect, it has the technological aspect, and that all combines into global aspect, right? A business which operates globally or has relations, that means has suppliers or customers or management is sitting some other country. It has relations globally, right? That are affected from global events like the new US president is being selected, or North Korea is doing something in particular country. Japan's prime minister resigned recently, if you are following up the news, right? So all these global events, they're affecting some business or the other, right? In some MNC might have relations with Prime Minister of Japan, who because of ill health resigned recently. So now that business has to strategize. Now this is a global thing. This is a global event that is actually affecting it, right? So it has to need to gauge. Gauge means to analyze. Gauge means to understand and react to the global event on a daily basis. So that is what the global environment is, right? So a business should understand the positive and negative impact of the global events like Indo-China relations and TikTok. What happened with TikTok? The positive and negative impacts. Identification of global trends and markets like increasing health conscious people in India, whey protein brands coming into India, right? Then differences, you have differences between different cultures and social setups of a nation. Right? Masala dosa burger was introduced by McDonald's in India, right? So difference between different cultures. This is all coming under global. This is all coming under global, right? Okay, a quick question for you all, very quickly, 30 seconds on the clock. Intermediaries exert a considerable influence on the business organization. This statement is true for which of the environments, right? Intermediaries exert a considerable influence on which of the following? Is it internal environment, micro, global, or technological? 30 seconds on the clock. Quickly, everyone, please. So the question about what is R&D? R&D is research and development. R&D is research and development. Technology is patronized by business. What is the meaning of patronized? Patronized means identify. business is actually identified by the technology it uses, by the technology, how advanced it is in technology. It is patronized by technology. Okay. All right. Last 10 seconds, and then we will see the correct answer. I have answer from Ajit, Faizan, Mohammad Arshad, Trishila, Gayatri, Shubham, wonderful. Okay. All right. So everyone has, major of you have written microenvironment. Some of you have written internal, some have written global. But remember, intermediaries was part of microenvironment. Remember, we talked about intermediaries being big bazaar, metro malls. They were part of microenvironment, right? Quick revision for all of you. Okay, let us quickly see pestle analysis. I'll take another 15 minutes and then we'll close this session. So please bear with me for another 15 minutes and we will close this chapter. Okay, so let us talk about pestle analysis. Pestle analysis is political, economic, socio-culture, technological, legal, and environment. PESTLE. Last time we studied in the first session of chapter 2, we studied about SWOT analysis, but this is pestle analysis. It is talking about the political pressure and groups, the technological we just discussed. We discussed each of these components in detail, right? We have discussed all of these components. But what does pestle analysis do? Pestle is political, economic, socio-cultural, technological, legal, and environmental. So all these components are actually covered. This analysis actually helps to analyze all these components of external macro environment. Pestle analysis helps to analyze the components of macro environment. Note it down somewhere, right? So, what is the difference between SWOT analysis and pestle analysis? Pestle analysis and SWOT analysis are actually doing the same thing, but for different environments, right? SWOT analysis gave us strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat for environment as a whole, both internal as well as external. External has micro and macro. Each and every type of environment can be covered by SWOT analysis. Each and every component of whether it is internal, whether it is external, whether it is micro, whether it is macro, technological, geographical, demographic, intermediary, market, supplier, because you take up any component, SWOT analysis is relevant for you, right? You can do SWOT analysis. You can find out what are your strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat for anything we have discussed in chapter 2. Any component, whether it is internal, whether it is micro, whether it is macro, whether it is any component of these. SWOT analysis can be done to help identify what are your strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat related to that particular component. However, pestle analysis is only for macro external environment, right? When I have to understand the macro environment specifically, when I have to understand that what all components are there in my macro environment, I as a business want to understand the external environment. Even in external, I have to understand the macro environment. I will go and do pestle analysis. I will find out what are the political pressure groups. I will find out what is the economic condition. I will find out what is the social beliefs of people. What is the technological, what is the technology that is coming up? What is the technology I want? What is the legal, how easy it is to do a business there on a legal front? What is the environmental concerns of that nation or that society? What are the environmental concerns with my business, right? So I will go and do a pestle analysis, political, economic, social, cultural, technological, legal, and environment. I'll do this analysis to find out what are the different things that will affect my business in terms of political, economic, social, culture, technological, legal, and environment. But if I have to understand any concept, any component of any environment, I can go and do a SWOT analysis. I can go and do a SWOT analysis to find out my strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. As simple as that. Simple differences for the environment as a whole, we have SWOT analysis. For macro environment only, we have pestle analysis, right? Now, a very important thing to understand is the business should focus on utilizing its strengths and exploit opportunities. When we understand SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, threat, I have to use my strength to exploit opportunities, and I have to overcome my weaknesses to fight off threats, right? There will be a threat to me because I am weak. There will be an opportunity for me because I am strong. So SWOT analysis actually uses your strength to exploit the opportunity, and it tells you what is your weakness so that you can fight off the threat, right? Now, we will discuss the final component of how can a company respond to all these components, to all this. If I find out if I do a SWOT analysis, if I do a pestle analysis, I found out what are the components that are affecting me. Now, what are the different approaches I can have to answer that, to react to that? Very quickly and very simple topic. So the first one is I can be least resistant, right? First, a response to the environment. I found out that this is my component, this is my micro component, this is my macro component, this is my different components. I did a SWOT analysis, I did a pestle analysis, I got what is my strength, what is my weakness, I found out what is my political, legal, this and that. I found out everything. I bifurcated everything. Now my task is how do I want to react? Now there can be three strategies. The first is least resistant. That means I just manage to survive. I will not take any action. I will just sit down. I will relax and let happen whatever happens. I will just manage to survive. That is number one. Least resistive. Least means minimum. Resistance means wanting to change. I am least interested in changing. Least resistance. Right? The objective is I just have to maintain what is happening. I am not ambitious. I am very passive. Passive means laid down. I am very relaxed. Right? There is no transformation. For example, we'll understand this with example. BSNL, MTNL, Nokia, their environment was changing. Technology was changing. New competitors were coming in. The market was changing. Governments were changing. Everything in their environment was changing. But they did not respond. They were least resistant. They were changing to the minimum. They were not changing. And thus they went out of business. Example, BSNL, MTNL, Nokia, right? Second strategy, proceed with caution. Proceed with caution is I monitor and identify the changes. I did an analysis. I found out like this is what is changing. I found out what is changing. I changed my goals. I changed my objectives. I start changing myself, but slowly. I start changing myself, but slowly, right? I slowly adapt to new. Least resistance is not changing at all. Proceed with caution is changing, but slowly, right? We slowly adapt. Adapt means to bring about a change, right? To adapt to new thing, to bring about a change. I slowly change and I consider the environment as given situation and react. I do not want to change the environment, but I react to the environment. I change myself and react to the environment. That is proceed with caution. For example, Airtel. Airtel is entering into new markets with caution. If you're following up news, Airtel is entering into Africa with caution. It has been 6-7 years. Slowly, steadily, they are going into African market because they have understood the business. The government there is tough. The legal structure is not easy. The demographic is not economically, the competition is fierce. They already have good telecom companies there. So they have gauged their business and they're proceeding there with caution in Africa, right? They are changing. They're monitoring changes and they're moving slowly. They are changing, but slowly. And the third strategy is dynamic response. Dynamic is quick change. Dynamic is very quickly changing on a god speed, like just like Eminem raps, right? Very quick. So dynamic means changing very quickly. So considering environment as a controllable and manageable. So when as a business I'm responding, I think that I can control the environment. I think I can change the environment. I am conscious and confident about my strengths. I am conscious means I know about my strengths. I am confident about my strengths. And I try to convert my threats into opportunities. That is what Reliance Jio is doing right now. They are dynamically responding to the environment. They know their strengths. They are controlling the environment. They try to convert their threats into opportunities. So all of the business are actually understanding their business, doing a SWOT analysis, doing a pestle analysis, finding out what are the different components, and then responding. They can be least resistant, not changing at all. They can proceed with caution, changing, identifying and changing themselves, but slowly, or dynamic response. That is changing at God's speed, changing super quick. Right? Okay. Now, a very quick last question for all of you. Nokia and BlackBerry went out of business when their technological environment was changing at a very fast pace, right? Nokia and BlackBerry went out of business because the technology was changing very fast. Touchscreen phones were coming with very great facilities and cameras. But they opted for a strategy, right? Which of these strategies, which of these responses they opted for because of which they failed, right? Was it a dynamic response? Was it the least resistance? Was it collective strategy? We studied about internal strategies, joining hands together and forming a joint venture, collective strategy, or they proceeded with caution. 30 seconds on the clock, please start answering. Okay, I already have answers. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, okay. I have a lot of answers. Some are saying dynamic, some are saying collective. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dipali, most of your queries, what I'm planning is after we complete chapter 3, I will keep a half an hour session where we'll discuss all the queries for the past 3 chapters. So keep practicing, keep making questions, writing down somewhere. After I complete chapter 3, I will have a separate session where we will have a conversation on discussing all the questions. We will try to understand all those concepts again in brief, finding those solutions, all those MCQ questions. Be assured, I will do that. We will have a separate session for that. I'll keep a 30-minute separate session on after completing chapter 3 and we will discuss the MCQs. I will also try to give you more questions. We will have a session where we'll only talk about questions, right? So be assured I have that plan. We will do that. Okay, let's quickly go to the answer. Most of you have answered, but I think there are a lot of wrong answers as well. The answer is least resistance because Nokia and BlackBerry did not change themselves. They were looking at the environment changing, but they were least resistance to change. They were minimally changing. They're not changing at all, right? So there was a least resistance response from them, right? So there was a least resistance because of which they went out of business. And that is one of the strategies they opted and which is always a poor strategy, right? Okay, let us quickly summarize chapter 2, business environment, one of the biggest chapters. We have finished, so congratulations. And let us just quickly summarize in 2 minutes and we will take 5 minutes for questions and then close this. So first is we understood about business environment and its characteristics. It is dynamic, it is complex, it is far-reaching impact, its relationship and influences on business, right? Its relationship is change of information and data, influence on business. A business can influence the environment of how environment influences the business through information. Then we studied about environment scanning, events, trends, issues, and expectations. We talked about internal strategies that were administrative, competitive, and collective. We studied SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat for environment as a whole. Then we studied about internal and external environment. We took the example of universe We put that table there. We understood about what is macro and macro, what is internal, what is external environment. We had that diagram. You can refer that, right? Then we studied about micro and macro environment, each and every component of micro and macro environment. We discussed in detail with examples. We had questions. We talked about pestle analysis, which is only for macro environment, political, economic, social-cultural, technological, legal, and environmental analysis. Pestle analysis for macro environment. And we just looked about the strategic responses to the environment, that is least resistance, then proceed with caution, and finally is dynamic response. So this chapter is actually complete with business environment. These are the topics we covered, we discussed about, right? Last 5 minutes, I'll take up any questions you have, any relevant questions we'll discuss, and then we will close this till Friday, where we'll start with chapter number 3, business organizations, and which is one of my most favorite chapters because you get to understand a lot about a lot of organizations. One of the best things I like about reading in newspapers and news is understanding businesses, and that is what chapter 3 is. We will study about who owns the business, what is that business, what do they do, what is their mission, what is their vision, right? It is a really interesting chapter. Okay, let us take questions for 2-3 minutes and then we will close this. Okay. What is pestle matrix? Actually, if you look into the study material, pestle matrix is nothing but putting those components we discussed about macro environment. You make a matrix. Matrix means a box. You make a box into political, PESTLE. You put those components like what is my political component, what is my legal component, what is this, what is that, what is this. If you put those elements into different PESTLE, that makes a pestle matrix. So that is nothing but pestle analysis, right? Social culture involves tradition. Absolutely, yes. So pestle does not have demographic. So basically, pestle analysis is an analysis that was actually covering a lot of things except demographic, right? It is a macro. It is just a kind of analysis, right? It is a tool, like I talked. There are many other tools which might cover demographic, but pestle analysis as a tool does not cover demographic, right? So the idea of teaching you pestle analysis is to tell you, like some of you were asking questions, how do I find out market research? How do I find out which company is this? How do I find out that? So one of the tools is pestle analysis. None of the tools is complete. So that is why you see the pestle does not have demographic, but it covers a lot many other things, right? Like environment. It is covering environment, which we did not discuss, but it is there in pestle analysis. Okay, last 1 minute, and we will take up questions I'll look after the questions and we'll take up in the next session then. Okay. I have questions from Jyoti, Kritika, Pinchika, okay, let me see. How can negative growth rate affect the business environment? Absolutely, yes. So if you were talking about your market growth, right? If your market growth is going down, let's suppose, I'll give you a very quick example. Because of the medical technology improving, right? The age of old people is increasing. Earlier, old people used to live, right? Live till 65 or 70. Now they're living at 82. So the market is actually increasing, and the market, like people are actually living healthy because of the technology. So all those products which were actually there for old people, right? Like let's suppose if there are vitamins and we all are consuming vitamins and different medicines, and number of people who want wheelchairs is decreasing, right? Because we have all those vitamins and surgeries. My technology is increasing. I can have prosthetic legs. I can have like artificial legs. So wheelchair business is going down, just for an example. So that is a negative growth, and that is actually affecting my business, right? My Gmail in the query for limited time. I think I'll have to talk to the Board of Studies and I'll let you know by next session how can you reach me. or what will be the mode of interacting with you guys more, whether it's comment box or I can like connect you some other mode, right? I'll let you know that. So be assured, we will talk more, we will converse more. I will help you with all the queries. I am there. And with that said, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for being interactive. And it was a wonderful, wonderful session. I think I covered most of it. So thank you so much. Stay home, stay safe. I'll see you on Friday with one of the very interesting chapters, that is chapter number 3, business organizations. And we today completed 2 chapters, chapter 1, introduction, and chapter 2, business environment. Thank you everyone for joining. Take care. Yes. Yes, please. Yep. Thanks.